All right, I think we're live. Hi, everyone. I'm Miranda. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, and I'm the Women's Program Officer here at the New Haven Pride Center. Happy Pride Week, everyone. This is really exciting. I am so thrilled to finally be celebrating my first full Pride after 1 year at the New Haven Pride Center with you all. It is my 1 year work anniversary this week, so I'm very, very excited to be here and celebrating Pride New Haven and putting on awesome programming centered around women and femmes here in New Haven and Connecticut and across the United States. I'm so excited for this particular program, which is an author talk with the amazing Jean Copeland, which is a special edition of what we normally call our Lavender Lit Book Club. The Lavender Lit Book Club centers queer women and femme authors and a program that is inclusive of people of all gender identities, including allies, as we read everything from collections of short horror stories and science fiction stories to an autobiographical manga that we read last month. And this month, our book is One Woman's Treasure by the amazing author Jean Copeland, based here in Connecticut. And how this particular program is going to go is that after I introduce Jean, she's going to share with us an amazing treat, which is an excerpt of her recent book. And then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A discussion. And we want this to be as participatory as possible. So I'm going to be asking some questions, of course, and getting things going. But please, if you have any thoughts on the excerpt, about Jean, about her life, about being a queer woman writer. If you just want to talk about the field of romance, please comment that. I will be fielding these comments and questions. We also love to be able to share your joy and your enthusiasm with our guests. And with that, I'm super thrilled to introduce Jean Copeland on the screen.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Miranda.
Hi, Jean. It's so amazing to see you. I'll read your bio real quick, and I'll pass it on to you to do our excerpt.
All right.
Jean is an author and English language arts teacher at an alternative high school in Connecticut. For her first novel, The Revelation of Beatrice Darby, she won the Alice B. Reader's Lavender Certificate and the 2016 GCLS Goldie Award for debut author, and was a Goldie finalist in the historical fiction category. In addition to her novels, Jean has published numerous works of short fiction and essays online and in print anthologies. When not exploring the world of lesbian fiction, she enjoys watching her students discover their talents in creative writing and poetry, traveling, relaxing by the shore, and good wine and conversation with friends. Organ donation and shelter animal adoption are causes dear to her heart. Thank you so much, Jean, for joining us today. And let's introduce your book, One Woman's Treasure. So what is this all about?
Here it is, One Woman's Treasure. This is a friends to lovers romance that is about Nina and Daphne. Nina is sort of a fluid. She was married to a man and then recently got divorced. Daphne has been identified as lesbian all her life, and they sort of meet by accident. The treasure thing is that they're both into antiques, and they meet because Daphne accidentally steals an antique lamp belonging to Nina, and they become really good friends when they discover that they both have a love of antiques, and more importantly, they're both at a place in their life now where they've come out of long-term relationships and are sort of renegotiating and re-examining what life is going to be like now that they're both creeping up on middle age. And so the scene that I'm going to read is where they're in the friends mode right now, totally in the friends mode. And Nina has just gotten off the phone with her ex-husband, Zach, and is a little bit upset because Zach has not taken the divorce very well. So after a few minutes of chewing, they resume their chat. So Zach's still trying to make you feel like you ruined the family? Daphne asked. Nina offered a solemn nod. That's what upsets me most. I believe in family. I really do. She straightened her back and spoke with passion. I mean, I agonized over the decision for a long time before filing for divorce. I didn't want that for Noah, but I knew what it was like to grow up in a house where the parents stayed together for the family's sake. It was definitely more convenient for me and my brother when we were young, but it gave us an unhealthy view of marriage. My brother's divorced too, and no one came out as gay in that marriage. When Nina finally surfaced for air, she noticed Daphne's awkward expression. Wow, I've unloaded a lot on you so early into our drinking. Daphne laughed and refilled their glasses. To be honest, I'm honored you feel like you can. I like to fancy myself a good listener for friends, but I never feel like I know what to say to make them feel better. So I kind of get this uncomfortable look on my face. Well, at least that's what I've been told. Oh, no, not at all. In an uncharacteristic mood, Nina fibbed to spare her feelings. Daphne's empathy touched her so. How could she point out that her facial expression had indeed resembled that of a woman receiving a mammogram? Well, for what it's worth, Daphne said, I think you did the right thing. Why should becoming a mother mean you have to completely sacrifice your own happiness? My parents got divorced, and they both went on to have other relationships with nice people. It's not the end of the world. My son, for one, would probably agree. He really seems okay with everything. Nina shrugged, and then an anxious thought assailed her. Unless he's bottling up all his feelings and is going to grow up to be a truck stop serial killer. Daphne laughed as she was drinking, and Nina feared the sparkling rosé might spurt from her nose. I don't mean to laugh, Daphne said, but Noah is so far from serial killer material. Nina smiled at herself. I know, I'm still worked up from talking to Zach. I should have left well enough alone, but being here by myself made me feel some type of way. It's a gorgeous night, and I'm glad you're keeping me company. I'm so glad you called me, Daphne said. You have the best yard for hanging out and enjoying drinks. Nina nodded. Now, to figure out how to expand my social circle so more people can come over and partake of it with us. How do you meet lesbians around here? An excellent question. Daphne sat back in her chair, crossed her legs, and sipped her wine like a philosopher pondering life's great mysteries. Nina waited, her anticipation mounting. And the answer is? Daphne leaned forward slowly, deliberately, and addressed Nina as if she were about to reveal the Holy Grail. I don't know. You're a goof. Nina laughed and threw a cherry tomato at her for drawing out the suspense. Seriously, though, how do you meet interesting lesbian friends? Nowadays, Daphne said, you can join lots of online social groups. I belong to this group of local women who like to do outdoorsy things and have met some interesting people. How about dating websites? Have you ever met anyone there? Daphne shook her head. I was with Savannah, or Anne-Marie, or whatever the hell she's calling herself, for a long time. We had couple friends, and now that we're not a couple anymore, she shrugged. I'm not really outgoing, so I don't meet a lot of new people, except when I steal from them. That worked out well for both of us, Nina said. Oh well, we'll figure something out. In the meantime, here's to us. She raised her stemless wine glass. Daphne smiled. You know something? I used to be so sad that my old friends sided with Anne-Marie, but after I got to know my neighbor Sophie much better and met you, I've realized that even the darkest times can turn into the brightest spots in life. I know that sounds corny, but no, I agree. I've had the same realization, Nina said. If a breakup causes friendships to end, they weren't very solid to begin with. Take out that trash, girl. Yes, Daphne gestured with a sweeping hand. We're decluttering our lives. They both chuckled. And now that we've decluttered, that leaves us room for more antiques. If you're free Sunday, there's an outdoor flea market in Fairfield. I've found some cool pieces there in the past. Flea market? You know, I've never thought of that as a place to hunt antiques. I've always just hit estate sales and actual antique shops. But yes, I'm free. Nina felt a smile stretching across her face. What was she so giddy about? A spectacular, sparkling rosé? New things on the horizon? Or was it a, no, please, no. It absolutely wasn't because she was starting to crush on Daphne. It would certainly help her cause if Daphne would stop flashing that adorable, nervous grin whenever Nina least expected it.
Woo! I wish there could be more of an audience here that you could hear clapping. But I hope we're getting the full round of applause.
Thank you. Your energy level is pretty high, so that's good.
Yeah, I keep getting told that today, and I'm like, I feel so dead inside. So I'm not.
It doesn't matter what you feel like inside.
Yeah, it's not about how you feel; it's how you look.
That's right.
But thank you so much for that. I really want that to become a movie. So like, sit around, have a glass of wine, and like eat popcorn. And you read that so wonderfully, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So I also appreciated the shout out to the actual amazing women's groups here in Connecticut, including the outdoors groups that you shouted out. And that anyone watching, if you're feeling lonely and looking to meet other, cool lesbian and bi and sapphic and queer women friends, the New Haven Pride Center is the place to go. If you're feeling especially shy and need some extra help, always email me, women@newhavenpridecenter.org. We're here for you, no matter what age you come into your identity. You should have a space for you. So thank you so much for reading that. I think it was super relevant to the theme of Pride Week and, coming to terms with your identity and finding those special bonds, even if they're, a little bit more than just friendships, as it seems like it's going to be, which is really cute and wonderful. So circling back a little bit, and we'll get talking more about this particular book. Okay. But how did you get your start as a professional, writer? What made you decide to break into this field? When did you write your first book? All of those things.
Ever since I was young, I've always loved writing. I've always loved, especially character-driven pieces. I started really with getting into my first real stories when I was around 19 in the late 80s. But it wasn't until I was working on my bachelor's degree at Southern to become a teacher that I had met a queer woman who was in a queer studies class. And she told me about erotica. And I was older than the average student at the time because I went back for teaching as a second career. But when she told me about that, I started to look into it. And so I said, this is what I find interesting. So I started writing some erotic stories under a pseudonym, and they started to get published, which I thought was interesting because, like, the previous heteronormative stories that short stories I used to write were always getting rejected from journals and stuff. So, years later, I realized that they just weren't my authentic voice. I was writing back then heteronormative stories because that's what I thought would get published. So I have to thank Eric Maroney. If Eric is still out there, I would like to thank them very much. And then still at Southern, when I went back for my master's, I was focusing on creative writing to get my master's. And my first novel, The Revelation of Beatrice Darby, was actually my master's thesis for Southern. It was about 100 pages. And my thesis advisor, Tim Parrish, who's an amazing writer in his own right, he just gave me such great feedback all along that, when I was done with it and I graduated, I knew I really wasn't done with Beatrice Darby's story. So that's kind of where it all got started. That master's thesis really, really taught me and showed me how to get into the longer narrative because I'd always been afraid of it before.
Yeah. Hey, grad students, there is hope for you.
Absolutely.
Like, you can actually do something with that degree. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciated how you're able to frame it as, the importance of finding your authentic voice. And that's also something I wanted to touch upon with you, is that you write particularly in the genre of romance, with a little bit of erotica there. So to you, how did you first, come to terms with really, writing this from a lesbian perspective? And you talk about these character-driven stories and narratives. How do you find those inspiration for those characters and really feel like you're able to represent, the lesbian community in that way?
That's a great question. Really, they started out in my secret closeted imagination as a teenager, because I was going to school in the mid '80s, going to high school in the mid '80s, and we had no celebrity role models really, and I felt at the time very much that I needed to hide who I was in order to preserve my normal social life, as it were, in high school. And so I did an awful lot of daydreaming, to kind of put that identity that I was hiding kind of into some sort of compartment, so I could process it and deal with it without having it come out and ruin my life. And so, it was just daydream after daydream of, finding that girlfriend and just kind of living that happily ever after. And I think maybe I just had it bottled up for so many years that now that I'm free to express it, and I've been free to express it in writing for the last 10 years, it just seems like that's the direction that I keep going in. Even though I'm multi-genre, my publisher, Bold Strokes Books, they want and like to have a romance or some sort of romantic connection between women in their lesbian fiction, and that's fine with me because they're very good. I do get to explore other types of genres, but still stay true to that character-driven romance.
Awesome. Yeah, you wrote a book about, witches, I remember. That's on my reading list for next month. My, spooky Halloween. I'm dressing up every single day of every weekend.
That's the perfect book for October, Spellbound. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. So you must have people that come up to you, from time to time, and really, say that your work helped them feel seen, right? Like, what is it like interacting with, fans of your work? And, how does that make you feel? What are those moments like?
Well, hearing from any reader is, I just love it. I'm just so happy that reading one of my stories or one of my novels, brings them some enjoyment and it, allows them to kind of leave their real world for a while. And, everybody knows 2020 has been just way too much real world for all of us. And that was kind of one comment that I got. One Woman's Treasure was released in July, and one reader told me this was exactly the kind of story I needed for what was going on in the world around me. Because it is pretty wholesome and it is pretty sweet and fun and relatable. So I was happy to hear that, especially because 2020 has been pretty stinky. But my favorite, when I wrote the Revelation of Beatrice Darby, I chose, that's historical coming of age fiction. And I wrote that because I loved the 1950s time period. It's such a dichotomy of what the world saw about American life versus how it really affected the LGBTQ community and minorities. They were two vastly different worlds. And so when I did my when I did the story about Beatrice Darby, I wanted to add that complication of that sort of really bizarre, overly pure, almost Puritan social culture of the 1950s, just to make her coming out even harder than it had to be, because writers sometimes like to do stuff like that. And so, after, right? After the book came out, I was startled because, in a good way, because I was getting messages from older lesbians I had to do a lot of research to try to give voice to a woman who was 17 in the late 1950s. I was 17 in the late 1980s. And so I heard from a few older women that said, "Thank you for writing this book. This was the story of my youth that I couldn't express, I couldn't tell, I couldn't experience, in my real life."
Yeah.
And so that made me feel really good, because that was more than just the wonderful compliment of, "Hey, I loved your book. Just let me escape for a while." This was like really specifically these women who spent way longer in the closet than I did, actually got to kind of maybe read a story of a character that resembled them from that safe place of their imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really powerful. And I'm so glad to hear that you had people reaching out to you about that. And it really just says a lot about the power of the written word and the importance of storytelling, truly.
Thank you. Thank you.
So one of our commenters, Terry Lee, I love that name, asks if you're still writing erotica.
I had not written any erotica recently, because I've been for the last 2 years I've been working on 2 novel manuscripts in a year, and I just, it's not that I don't enjoy writing in the genre. I just don't have time now, between having to work full time and then meeting deadlines for the manuscripts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hear that. Finding the time to write is difficult.
Right.
As I was really excited to have this talk with you as a sort of, I love creative writing. My STEM kind of stuff comes to the surface most first, but I really love writing short stories. So being able to talk with you is fantastic.
Awesome.
And you're also a teacher.
Yes.
And so I wanted to ask, when you're working with these students, what is the advice that you often give them? How do you work to inspire them to write?
I will quote Hemingway, especially when I'm teaching with beginning teenage creative writers. I love Hemingway's quote, "The first draft of anything is shit." Because, and I totally believe that it's true of all my work, but a lot of times students in a classroom can feel intimidated, especially kids. They feel intimidated sharing their work. And I just want to set their minds at ease right from the minute we start, that you're not going to produce a perfect piece of writing. Just put down what you feel, and then the rest is, we go back and work as a group. They get peer reviews. I give them feedback. And I really have to tell every beginning writer of all ages that it is a process. It's a process. It's not just boom, 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 I'm going to type out my story and here it is. I wish it was that easy.
Yeah. Tracy just asked what the 2 works that you were talking about, what the works in progress are. Is One Woman's Treasure and the other?
No, Spellbound and One Woman's Treasure have already been released.
Right.
These are two books that are coming out next year.
Exciting. Prolific. Wow.
Well, I can't take all the credit for being a super writing genius, because Spellbound I co-wrote with the great Jackie D, who is also a great Bold Strokes author. And then Jackie D and I teamed up for next year with Aaron Zach. And the 3 of us are writing a suspense, sort of intrigue, murder type of thing that's coming out next June. And that one's called Swift Vengeance. And then my own work is coming out next July, called Poison Pen. And it's another romance. But in this one, I kind of harken back to those kind of 1950s Doris Day comedies, where there's always some sort of miscommunication. There's always some sort of, so it's totally modern. It's modern romance, but I kind of borrow from that 1950s kind of comedy of errors thing to kind of muddle up the ladies in their quest for love.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love that. So really exciting to hear that you have 2 more works on the way. And very much looking forward to reading both of those. I'm a huge fan of suspense and thriller novels. So very excited for that. Especially excited for queer representation within that genre. As we look to make everything gay. Everything should be gay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about pulling in inspiration from sort of historical works, witchcraft, sort of magic, and in some ways some of these sort of like traditional romance tropes. How do you work to make those queer and fresh and unique? How do you sort of find the queer take on those without just being, having the queer characters there?
That's another good question, and I don't know that I've really given it much thought as far as how to approach it from the queer point of view, because even though I've written a lot of heteronormative short stories, I've never written a novel as anything but queer fiction. Mm-hmm. And so, it's kind of like I'm creating the characters from an authentic place. So, yeah. Even if I hop around from different genres, I'm still keeping the integrity of the queer character. And I was particularly challenged with that because Jackie and I had a queer Puritan woman from Salem, Massachusetts in Spellbound. So that's where that's where you kind of have to stop and say, okay, well, wait a minute. How, we've all probably read at least one thing from the Puritan era in our high school times. And so we understand what the straight character or the straight person was in that time period. But to come up with a queer one, that definitely took some imagination and kind of like an amalgamation of imagination plus the things that I'd studied about that time period.
Absolutely, yeah. Someone does comment asking if a movie's coming out based on one of your books. I do think that was a miscommunication because I was saying I wish there were more movies based on these books, unless this is something that I didn't do my homework on.
No, Miranda, from your mouth to the goddess's ears, I'd be delighted if any one of them was picked for a movie.
If anyone in Hollywood or even indie film directors watching this, I want a movie based on any of these novels. So yeah, I just think it would be really entertaining. So that was my bad, Anna. Didn't mean to spread misanformation.
Suggestion though.
Yeah, just putting it out there. Speaking it and hoping it will come true. But thank you so much for being, talking really about the sense of authenticity that you bring forth to your work. I really appreciate that. As a young queer woman, I think it's just so important to be able to write, not thinking about how do we force representation into something, but just speaking, as you said, from a genuine and authentic place. Right. Because queer women, queer people, the whole LGBTQ community is out here living our day-to-day lives, right. And we've been out here. We've existed right. Since the dawn of time. We're not new. Right.
We know how to be queer.
Yes, yeah. So just finding the stories that have always existed and just haven't been told. And right. I really appreciate the work that you do. It's so important. As you said, when you have those fans coming up to you and saying, that they felt seen in your work. It's really incredible. So talking about One Woman's Treasure in particular, I just wanted to ask a little bit about the inspiration behind this novel. It seems it seems so real and lifelike to me. So I wanted to ask you where you got the inspiration from. Who are these characters?
the concept came from, sometimes I will, during like trash season, like bulk trash season in April, I'll go driving by people's houses and I'll see the stuff that they're throwing away. And a couple of times I picked up a chair, I picked up a dresser, I picked up like this neat little ornate kind of buffet, and I redo them myself. And, you know, I would just think, like when I'm done redoing it, I'm like, wow, this is actually really nice. And somebody thought it was junk.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, it's not even like I was buying stuff at an antique store. This was stuff that people threw out. And so, you know, just having that, you know, having that like desire and interest in my free time, I started to think about that concept of when you get broken up with, even if the relationship had run its course and it was time to separate, if you're the one that gets dumped, it's hard not to feel like, you know, even for a fleeting moment, even if you've got all your stuff together, it's hard not to feel for a fleeting moment that you've been tossed out, that you've been set aside, which is, you know, that's a natural reaction, I think, but it's such an unfair thing that we do to ourselves, because, you know, the truth is that you will go on and meet someone else, and that person will value you in the way that you weren't valued at the end of a previous relationship. And so I just started thinking about that concept and thought it would be really interesting to create characters sort of around that idea. That, you know, one person throws something out and then another person thinks that it's a beautiful thing worth keeping.
That's a really lovely and, you know, an excellent note to close on, since we are almost out of time. Thank you so much for that. I feel very uplifted in terms of, you know, those positive feelings. I'm in a very happy relationship right now, but you know, have been through my share of breakups, and you know, that's definitely something I think a lot of us, if not all of us, who have dated can relate to, is that feeling that, you know, you're not good enough. So we do want to emphasize, please get yourself a copy of One Woman's Treasure. Read it nice and quickly, and then come back Tuesday, September 29th, on Facebook Live with me, and I will be discussing this book in more detail with all of you, getting into the nitty-gritty of it, and super happy to have this be our next installment of the Lavender Lit Book Club. Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much for choosing it, Miranda. I'm so excited that it's a book club book.
Yes, absolutely. You know, really thrilled to be able to connect with a Connecticut-based author who is, you know, a badass gay woman making her mark in the literary world. Super cool. Oh my God, your shirt.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. I was like, oh, shirt looks pretty. I did not realize it was.
No, I'm not flashing as we close.
Absolutely. And if you want to get your book signed or pick up a copy of a signed book, on October 10th, we're having our socially distanced but in-person Pride New Haven event, our block party, and Jean will be there, ready to, you know, sign the book, take in all of your praise and, you know, enthusiasm for it. Just, you know, finally get the round of applause that I wish we could get for that. And Carly is a book club book. It is a part of our Lavender Lit Book Club. Okay, we're back on my end. Our book club centers queer women authors from Connecticut sometimes, but also beyond. We've had everything from a collection of short horror stories to an autobiographical manga to a YA novel. And we're so excited to have Jean's book be the next installment of our Lavender Lit Book Club. It's once or twice a month, with one book a month, usually on a Tuesday, hosted on Facebook Live. We are considering switching to Zoom or other platforms. Email me if you have thoughts on that, women@newhavenpridecenter.org. But super excited to be able to discuss this book with you on Facebook Live on Tuesday, September 29th. And to have you get a copy of your book signed on October 10th. So that's our upcoming events. Any final words from our amazing author?
I just wanted to thank you and the viewers, and congratulations on your year with the center. It seems like you're doing an amazing job for queer women in the New Haven and Connecticut area, and that's always
that. I try.
That is so important, so important. And you know what? Keep reading Queer Lit, and we'll keep writing it.
Absolutely, yes. All right, super wonderful to have you. And thank you so much for that little sneak preview of your book. It was fantastic. All right.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Take care.